This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. First, though, let's take a look at our top stories. Sweeping gains for far-right parties in the European Parliament lead France's President Macron to call a snap election, while the Belgian Prime Minister has resigned. The wife of Dr. Michael Mosley has paid tribute to her wonderful, funny, kind and brilliant husband after his body was found in Greece. And Senior Minister Benny Gantz has resigned from Israel's war cabinet, claiming Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is incapable of claiming a real victory against Hamas in Gaza. Hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the barrister and former government minister Anna Soubry and the writer and broadcaster Esther Kreikou. Thank you both for coming. Now, let's see what is on some of those front pages. Well, news tonight that President Macron is calling a snap general election in France is the top story in The Guardian. The Telegraph says that it came after Macron was trounced in the European elections by what it calls a right-wing surge. The Metro leads with the news that the body of the missing TV doctor Michael Mosley has been found on the Greek island of Symi. The Mirror also makes that its top story, as does the Daily Mail, the paper that Dr. Mosley also wrote for. According to the Financial Times, Labour will drop a policy from their election manifesto that would have seen the reintroduction of a lifetime cap on tax-free pensions. Meanwhile, a poll conducted on behalf of the Eye suggests Labour hasn't yet won over the public on crucial topics, including immigration, crime and the economy. The Times quotes the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, as saying that the Conservatives must embrace Nigel Farage and his Reform Party in order to unite the right. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Anna Soubry and Esther Kreikou. Thank you both for being with us. Let's take a look at a story that's been breaking over the past few hours, managed to make the front pages. Though, let's look at The Guardian. And Macron calls snap election after surge of the far right. So we had the exit polls from the European election. Yeah. Turns out that Marine Le Pen's party did twice as well, it seems, as Emmanuel Macron's. And he's taken this surprising decision, Anna, to call for a legislative election.
Yes, I mean, one of the things that, I can understand the consequences of it, but what was he, or why he's doing it, if you like, for political reasons. Yeah. But what was the reason that he says he's calling it? And obviously he's saying, well, I need to make sure that the people of France, we have stability and we have the sort of things that we believe in as French people, almost, if you like, to contradict the vote in these Euros. So that's the reason he says he's calling it. But the political reality of it is he needs to do this. He's only got 2 years left of his presidency. So he needs this really to reassert his authority. And to make sure that he doesn't have 2 lame duck years and to secure his future. Because I don't think he can stand for a third term, so he needs to make sure that his successor wins.
Yeah, it's a question of political legitimacy. If you've just had a party your main opposition do twice as well in the European elections, you certainly have to call that. I think he's running a big risk because Macron's presidency has been at best shaky. Every time you hear Macron speaking of anything other than domestic French politics, it's not going well for him. He'll talk about anything else from Russia to Ukraine, to Israel, to anything else than French domestic politics. So he's really kind of, positioned himself as kind of an international leader more than a successful French domestic leader. But I think there's a real chance here that he could be signing his resignation letter. 2 years. I mean, a Le Pen prime minister and Macron presidency is.
He'll be
a lame duck.
What a terrible thought.
Well, let's look at the front page of the Telegraph, because, of course, the Macron story is shocking. But the whole makeup of the European Parliament could change somewhat. Here it says Macron trounced in right-wing EU surge. It had been predicted, hadn't it?
Yes, and isn't it interesting? You showed the front page, rightly, of The Guardian, and they, of course, in my view, quite properly describe it as the surge of the far right, but, of course, the Daily Telegraph just sees it as the right. But anyway, yes, if you look into what the Telegraph is predicting is going to be the final outcome, it seems that that coalition of more centrists and few Greens sprinkled in the northern is going to win overall control in the European Parliament. But just.
Yeah. I mean,
and
it's an interesting thing because...
It's not just France, is it?
Yeah, because Le Pen has spent a long time rebranding the Front National as from far right to just right. I mean, we know the acrimonious relationship she has with her own father over the kind of domestic power struggle that they had within the party. So I suspect they're probably just trying not to annoy the Front National readers by calling them just right instead of far right. But across Europe, you're seeing this sort of wave. I mean, people are not really surprised by the results in Germany, because they expected the AfD to do well, but they didn't expect him to do this well. So Olaf Scholz has a challenge there. The Belgian Prime Minister has also just resigned. So we're going to see we're seeing a slow wave, but I suspect it's going to be a hurricane soon.
Let's take a look at our own elections. Go to the Times front page there, and one of the main titles, Tories must embrace Farage. That's according to Suella Braverman. Worth reminding everyone, as if we need reminding, that, of course, Nigel Farage was an MEP. So, you know, the overlap between the European Parliament and domestic politics happened here as well. Anna, what do you make of this?
Well, yes, and there's also this. Perhaps we had this before other countries like France and Germany, as you were saying, Belgium and other places, in mainland Europe, this growth of the right-wing populism. And it's often latched onto the EU, in my view, because it becomes an easy target and because we don't make the case for the institution of the European Union. And if you like, people with small L liberals don't make the case for liberalism because they just take it that everybody's kind of got it now. And in fact, you always have to be developing political arguments and having them. But this story, well, what a surprise. Because here we go. Here's the lovely Suella Braverman, obviously saying that very sarcastically, is saying that the Conservatives must brace Farage. Farage, of course, we remember, was a member of the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
He is on that far right, in my view. And what's happened is, with as it seems to be, because we don't know what's going to happen on July the 4th, but if it's right that the Tories really lose lots and lots and lots of seats, as the polls would seem to indicate, then they're going to become a rump. And the makeup of that rump is largely going to be people of Braverman's persuasion. So the Tory party's always been a big, broad church, right? And it's going right down now to this narrow far right. And she is saying Farage can come back and join us.
I mean, this is clearly...
And indeed, he could lead us. I don't think she's going to say that because she wants to.
Yeah, this is her pitch. This is her pitch to be Tory leader.
She'll be
clearly
the moderate alternative.
Well, I don't think they'll go that far. But this is clearly her pitch to be the next Tory leader, because everyone can see a civil war brewing between what currently exists of kind of the one nation Tories and what will be left after the election, depending on how catastrophic their defeat will be. And she kind of wants to be the first to say, yes, we must have embraced Farage. I mean, many Tories are scratching their heads saying, why didn't the Tories do a deal with Farage a la 2019? Well, because a lot has happened since 2019. So I don't think Suella Braverman is saying this
and sorry,
because
but the alternative in 2019 was Jeremy Corbyn.
Yes,
which
exactly.
Scared the pants off
which was easy pickings, yeah. So, I mean, I'm not surprised by this. I'm surprised that this intervention has come in so late. I thought Suella would have probably released something like this a while ago. But, yeah, the reform is a big headache for the Tories, certainly.
I think in the middle of an election campaign, I mean, the disloyalty of these people should never be underestimated. I hope Conservative members remember that when it comes to casting their vote for their
Assuming
next
there's
leader.
a Conservative Party left.
Well, let's look at the Labour Party. Now, front page of the Eye, a new poll shows that Labour has yet to convince voters on key policy areas. Esther, forgive me, you've got 20 seconds.
Yes. Well, I think the main reason is because we haven't seen a full manifesto yet. So we are yet to see Labour, particularly on the finances of how they're planning on funding.
I think it's because people know that the reality is we don't have much money left. And I think it will come down to what sort of Prime Minister and government you want. If you want decency and competence, that's what Labour is basic, and that's the change they offer. But it just shows you there's a long way to go yet. And nobody should think that the polls and that the Labour Party have got it in the bag, because I still think there's a lot of people who haven't quite made up their minds.
And so we're going to have to leave it there for now. But coming up, a key member of Israel's emergency war cabinet resigns and tells Benjamin Netanyahu to call an election. We'll discuss that next.
Dominic Waghorn, Sky's international affairs editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours, and we're going to take it back.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power. Now, freedom! There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes, torrential rain and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued with its ultimatum to the people of Ashkelon, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in. Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous. We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me now, Anna Soubry and Esther Kreku. Okay, let's go straight to the front page of the Financial Times. Story out of Israel. Benny Gantz, a centrist, quits Israeli coalition over Netanyahu's handling of the Gaza war. He had said he was going to quit, and it's because basically he doesn't think Netanyahu has a plan for when the violence ends in Gaza, and they actually should set,
and what happens afterwards.
Exactly.
And I think he'd always planned to resign to put pressure on Netanyahu to call an election. But there are many people that are speculating that Netanyahu is prolonging this war, particularly because of sort of the harder right parties within his coalition to secure a better deal for them for what happens to Gaza afterwards. But Gantz is saying, we have to have a plan. We can't basically flatten this place and then leave the remaining population to their will. You might even see a resurgence of the kind of terrorism that brought Hamas to the front page. So, to the forefront. So, I mean, this is not surprising, but again, it's destabilizing for Israel. The problem with this conflict is it's been very hard to get the truth because there have been so many journalists that have been killed. There's so many different kind of narratives and vested interests on both sides.
And the foreign media isn't allowed in.
Exactly, and because many foreign journalists have been killed. I mean, more than 10 times than what have been killed over the course of the Ukraine war, just to put it in perspective. So there's obviously a very high casualty rate, which is also affecting information going out to the wider world, accurate information. So this is just going to be interesting to see whether this will draw the...
I think the timing is also interesting, is it not? Because it comes the day after or around at the time of the recapturing of a number of hostages But
So I think Benny
loss.
Gantz had said that he was going to resign yesterday, but then he didn't because of the hostages being rescued.
But exactly. So you see, you would have thought, well, maybe that shows that Netanyahu's strategy, such as it is in some perverse way working. Though if you're obviously one of those hostages, you'd be delighted to have been released, having been captured in this disgraceful way.
Assuming you've survived the military barrage, which is a big if.
Quite. But I think it shows, though, that there is great unease, even with the release of the hostages, at the price that it came with, which was colossal in those terms, with the Palestinians that were killed, children, because of them having to get back the hostages. And so I think it adds fuel, if you like, to this growing fire of thought that actually it is all going terribly wrong. I know obviously it's going terribly wrong for the Palestinian people in Gaza, but it's the whole strategy of Netanyahu is just not right. It's actually failing catastrophically. And hey, we're going to have yet another election. It's
Long-term people,
going to the polls.
Long-term is not unreasonable to say that Israelis don't want to send their children to die in Gaza indefinitely. I mean, that's the bigger question.
But that's the logic of what's...
Well, because the thing is, the longer that they prolong this, the longer that there's no plan for what happens to Gaza after the war is concluded, the more people are getting agitated. Are we just going to send more and more of children through this meat grinder, basically?
Yeah.
Let's finish on a very different kind of story. Front page of the Daily Mail, picture there of Dr. Michael Mosley and his wife. My brilliant husband, Michael, so very nearly made it. Of course, his wife paid tribute to him. It's very sad, isn't it, Anna?
It's just awful, isn't it? And we don't know how
all the circumstances,
we just don't know. What we do know, it seems to be very near, because there are obviously photographs of the place where his body was recovered from, and that's in all the front pages, I think, have this terrible... It is a terrible tragedy. We don't know the circumstances, but it seems to be very close. And I think his wife refers to that. He nearly made it.
Yeah.
And it's just sad, isn't it? Because he was much loved by his fellow broadcasters and obviously listeners, because he was mainly a radio. I know he did telly as well.
He did quite a lot of telly.
Yeah, but he was on radio, he did as well, probably because I know him through radio. But in any event, he was much loved. And he did mad, brilliantly wonderful things, putting a camera down to look at a tapeworm inside him, which, of course, was just...
He ate the tapeworm first.
Yes, that's right. But it was that exposure of science and medicine in a way that really nobody else had ever done before, and it excited people. And of course, the other great thing he did was that he showed that if you've got type 2 diabetes, by changing your diet and losing weight, you can actually, not just, you don't cure it, but you can halt it completely and reverse it. Great man, terrible loss.
I know, absolutely tragic. I mean, there's a reason why it's on the front page of every newspaper. It's quite shocking, actually. I think if I was his family member, this would be my worst nightmare.
Oh.
Because especially with his wife saying he nearly made it. I mean, if you look at the proximity to where they found his body from where he was originally with his family, it's only a few, 100 yards, really.
And it was a beach where there were people. And anyway, it's just awful, isn't it?
And he didn't have his phone, which might have been what tipped it over the edge. Anyway, it's very tragic, honestly.
Very sad. Anna Soubry, Esther Kriku, we're going to have to leave it there, but we'll speak to you again in the next hour. Coming up next on Sky News at 11, more on the seismic results in the European parliamentary elections and the rise of right-wing parties across the continent.